the show. Actually, he's a recording artist now, too. A lot to talk about, the one and only Rickey Vincent.
What's up, Calvin? Good to see you, man.
Man, great to see you. I finally kidnapped him. I said, man, he came up to kind of pick up something. I said, can I get you in the studio for just a second? Because he's just so busy or whatever. Kind of, man, you remind me of the story that the Whispers told me many years ago. They were telling Dick Griffey about Babyface when he was in Manchild, what a guy he was. But he was underneath the umbrella of Reggie Calloway, and Dick didn't want to buck Reggie because, so they had basically them produce the tracks on them, which was My, which would later be Johnny Gill, Rocksteady, and long story short. And they could no longer afford Babyface because he was just too busy, Karen White and everybody. And it's kind of like you. I remember when you were doing your first book, I can't never, not that you don't have time because you never changed, but you're just incredibly busy, man.
Well, we're both fortunate that the artists that we love, so many of them are still in play. They're still doing what they do. And we can catch them. You always able to catch these folks backstage, get them on tape, do the film that needs to be done. And I went back and looked at some of the archives I had, and when did I get in touch with that artist? When did I get in touch with this one? That's because they came to the Bay and they played and they performed. And when you perform in town, you want to get people to know about it. So doing radio was a great way to enjoy the artists and give them something they need, which is some publicity, and let people know that they're still thriving and people need to go see their show because everybody needs the phone.
You've always been an incredible, very astute, hard worker. And in the beginning, I used to really think like, okay, this guy, strictly P-Funk, blah, blah, blah. He knows his stuff, he's P-Funk. I had a conversation, and this boy slapped me upside the head with some Kool in the Gang knowledge that not only I didn't know, but it just kind of blew my mind, and it just goes to show that you never ever judge a book by its cover. I mean, I'm thinking it was a deuce and a quarter, and this dude was a straight up Lexus when it came to that kind of stuff. And I just was like, hey, I just, wow. I mean, it's just been one mind blower after another with you, man. Like I said, the book.
The same way with you, Calvin. If I need to know who's in the Delphonics, I go to you.
You really, for me, you took it to another level because we both know, like, a lot of that stuff in reference to the movement, like, let's just say at random, 77, Saturday Night Fever, you had All in All, the Commodores, P-Funk and all of them were lingering, but we both know, and you know better than I do, that P-Funk really didn't get the proper notoriety that they should have gotten, and that's where you and cats like you, kind of come in. And actually, when you put that book out, before I get to your latest project, I mean, it was not only so needed, but it was, for a lot of us who were like not really doing it on that level, it really, really allowed me a different kind of vibe when I was in the studio, like, okay, now he set the bar here, I gotta get to work and I have to do something. So on that end, man, I mean, just wow.
Well, it is interesting when things get written down, and people would come to me from other parts of the country and say, man, you're so knowledgeable about this music. And I said, no, there are people a lot more knowledgeable than me, but I wrote it down. And that was the way to lock it in and get other people to pay attention. And I wanted people to pay attention to the funk and all the layers and all the dimensions of it, whether it's the jazz bands that got into funk like Kool and the Gang, whether it was the King of the Hill, the P-Funk, and all the cosmology that went through it, that folks would be talking about it, after a show, just having fun. And I was like, well, this is on a deep level. This conversation needs to be put in place so people know how valuable, how important it is, and how liberating it is to really have something that you're proud of, that is a part of your culture, that can in so many ways has the antidote to what is ailing the world.
I think right now, America Eats Its Young and Cosmic Slop, George was so ahead of his time. Speaking of Clinton, was so ahead of his time with that album. When you look at what's going on now with with Trump and all this other kind of stuff, regardless of which side of the fence you're on. But they were thinking like that. It's just amazing. I'm 6, 7 years old, and that kind of stuff was going on, and you knew it was something different, but you just couldn't quite put your finger on it. And much like, and see, that's why I go back to you, where you're so important. Marvin Gaye, rightfully so, gets a tremendous amount of credit for what's going on, but Curtis, and I've always felt like P-Funk had a lot of undertones of a lot of the same value system, and you kind of put it out there for everybody on that, and I like to thank you. But really quick, tell me about this new album that you got, man.
Oh, the Fool for the Funk. Well, you know, I've always had ideas, and you've probably been on some of my shows. We would come in and just extemporize and sort of make up funky things on top of funky music. And I was like, you know, as serious as I am about trying to get the word of the funk out, there's a real kind of freestyle side, a silly side. And I said, well, that's how a lot of the great music is, silly and serious at the same time. And so I was putting things together to see what other type of music I might be a part of. And I touched base with Phil Jones, PTFI, producer. Yeah. And he had been working on Zootzilla and Dr. Illenstein and his own solo project. And he said, Rick, you're next. And I was like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about, because it's about that time. And he understood what I was thinking in terms of, let's take some of the serious and silly stuff that you do on radio, and let's make some jams out of it. Let's make some funk that is educational and entertaining at the same time. And so we went for it. I had one session at Phil Jones' spot where he has his archive of beats, and I was like, oh, that beat. Oh, let's put my Judy Morrison interview on that beat. Oh, that beat over there. That would be where that Cornel West interview from 11 years ago, that should go on that beat. And things just sort of came together. Phil is a master musician, and I was able to take some funk concepts and some of these interviews that really became kind of like lyrics in a song. And all the pieces came together, the guest stars, the guest musicians, the guest vocalists, just like they were with the program. They jumped right in and did some hellified contributions. And I was like, this thing is on. And got the cover art from Chris Herrod, who does some pretty amazing work of his own. He did Lala Hathaway's album that has a picture of her with all of Donnie's album covers in her head. That's Chris Herrod. He did the cover art to my album. And people just stepped up. I was like, this is on. Let's just make it happen. So Fool for the Funk is available. CD, iTunes, CD Baby. You can check it out. There's some choice nuggets in there and some contributions from people that, you know, some have passed away that I interviewed years ago. And we made jams out of them. Not interviews with sort of a click track in the background. No, we made funk jams, and part of the jam is learning about these people. So it was a lot of fun, and it's bumping. You know, with Phil Jones beats, you can't go wrong.
Phil Jones, probably, I mean, he's an incredible artist on his own, but to me as a producer, he really showed me something with that project, because like I told you, I'll share it with the audience, that project is, in reference to the funk, the best project personally that I've heard since Fast Food Funketeers Part 2 by Slapback. I mean, because that was a monster album, and this one, and matter of fact, you shocked me. I knew that you were always talented, but I think I inboxed you and called you, and I was trying not to beat a dead horse or be like, look, I'm not a groupie or nothing like that, and I'm not just now getting hip to you having tremendous talents, but I just couldn't believe how well it came off, man.
It was smooth, and Phil, you know, the sound, you can take something that's 20 years old sound-wise and make it slap in the music if you know what you're doing. And Phil was able to do that. And there were a few times where I had to say to myself, okay, am I this guy? I said, well, I've been talking funk smack for 30 years on the radio, and I've been on the mic for a long time, so let me just transfer some of that attitude and clarity to what I'm doing with this. And so that kind of was a fairly smooth transition, although there's some other dimensions and character. I learned a lot how funk characters, people come up with cartoon names for themselves and things like that, because they want to sort of exaggerate aspects of who they are and what they do, and so I started to learn how people sort of make a persona out of themselves, and so I learned a lot doing it. But my name is on it. It's Rickey Vincent, top to bottom, so I'm happy with it.
And a few other people that I need to mention before we get up out of here. If you want to really learn more about what we're talking about, there's Tim Kinley on Facebook, the Parliament Funkadelic thing. That's a monster type of site. You can get pretty much anything you need to know about anything in reference to P-Funk and that kind of slang, that kind of stuff there. George Darden II, who I had up here and we hung out for a little while, he has a thing called Eternal Funk, and he really gets into a lot of just different stuff, the ADC band, and there's a few other things, Funkentelechy and just a few other things. But I tell you, man, your show, and I've been doing Soul School for 20 years or whatever, but I tell you, man, you can always catch Rickey Vincent Friday nights on KPFA 94.1 FM from 10 to 12 Pacific time, and on if you're on the radio or whatever it may be. And also Philip Colley, I can't forget Philip Colley. Yeah, you definitely have to look him up online. He's another one. He's a monster talent and really knows his stuff as well.
And he makes music.
Yeah, matter of fact, he's working on a project right now, and I really didn't want to say anything because I'm waiting on it to come out. He came out here in the Bay Area, and he was so busy I didn't get a chance to even see him. So he's a very serious dude. Y'all got it going on, man.
Well, you can't just be about funk and not be doing funk. That's just kind of where it is. It's a participatory thing to be a part of, and but people just get in where they fit in, and if what I'm doing is doing dripping some liquid language on some things, that's all right. Whatever it takes, whatever the party calls for, whatever it takes to get that funk over the hump, I'm still willing to do it. And a lot of folks, you and I know, are willing to do it, but they're not able to at our age. There's other issues in play. So I'm blessed, you're blessed to be able to spend some time with what is, in our hearts to do while we do everything else that we got to do.
And one final thing before I let Rickey go that I got to get out, I got to get him to have a quick thought on this. Please support the Funk Hall of Fame and Exhibition Center Museum. That was something that had been needed for quite some time. We have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and all these things are great institutions and great things, but I've always felt like this particular music that we love so much, not that we don't love jazz and all the other stuff, it's so depreciated, it's unappreciated, and thank God for Tim Kinley, George Darden, and now we have David Webb.
So I love what David Webb is doing and is planning to do, and I'm also glad to see that a lot of Dayton funk bands, even though we lost Roger and we lose somebody out, the Ohio players, almost every 6 months, the Dayton funk bands know us up and they keep delivering the goods. Lakeside still plays, Zap still plays, Slaves Reincarnated, Phazo, a lot of these players perform. Steve Washington is still makes his music. Steve Arrington is strong as ever. The Dayton funk thing, it'll never die, and you need to center your story